Okay, welcome to Japan, and welcome to my Kawasaki Meguro 800cc parallel twin, going for a little ride in the mountains to take us to a shrine. I say us because my buddy is following in a car behind, and just had a look at the route, and looks like quite a nice route. Takes us through the mountains. Half an hour or so. We just had lunch at this little ramen place up here. Very popular little place, considering we're just in some tiny little village. We had to queue, but I think it might be the only ramen action in town. So I've got this bike for a couple of days, driving around some of my old neighborhoods, sort of. We're deep in the countryside in Kyushu, which is, I'll close my visor so it's less noisy. And Kyushu is a place that I called home for about 2 years. When I was a young man. I was about 21 when I lived in Kyushu. And currently we're in Nagasaki Prefecture, and we just visited a beautiful park with lots of maple leaves. There you go. I'm supposed to turn left here? Yes. I've got Google in my ear telling me where to go. And now we're on our way to a shrine. And then after that, we'll be heading home. But this is really fun for me. This is my first time riding a motorcycle in Japan. When I was living here all those years ago, I didn't actually have a motorcycle license. I only got my license later on in life. Ever since then, it's always been a sort of dream of mine to come back to Japan and put the license to good use. So that is what I'm doing this trip, finally. So far, it's been a mostly positive experience. Which I shall elaborate on. Okay, Google's just said continue for 7 kilometers, so nice straight road now. Well, at least there's no turnings. I do think it gets a little bit windy at some point. Okay, so picking up the bike was one of the smoothest handovers I've ever experienced. The bike was ready for me, and all I had to do was sign something, and then he gave me the keys. So that was awesome. Yesterday, me and Ed went on a bit of a road trip. We went all the way down from Fukuoka to Amakusa, which is pretty far away. It's like more than 100 kilometers. I'm not sure what the speed limit is on this road. I think it's probably a 50. That road trip was great and everything, except for on the way back, we left it a little bit late, and I ended up having to drive on the highway in the dark, in the freezing cold. I have a proper jacket and everything, but even then it was just so cold, to the point where it was honestly a little bit dangerous. They drive pretty fast on the highway here. It goes up to 120 kilometers an hour. Lots of trucks, and there's me shivering on my bike for 100 kilometers, which is quite far. I'm sitting on the bike for like, good hour and a half, just bombing it up the highway, praying that I get home before my phone battery runs out and my gas tank was getting empty, and that was very stressful. So lesson learned, bring a power bank on a long road trip like this. And also, don't leave your refueling too late. Oh, this is an interesting road. So far, we've been doing a lot of highway. This now is the first sort of mountainy road that we've done. So this is interesting. I'm going to take it a bit slow because I don't know this road. It's sort of reminiscent of Bali in a way. Or Thailand. The lane markings have just disappeared. I guess just gotta hope there's no massive truck coming the other way. Driving in Japan is very pleasant. Everyone's very calm and collected, and no one's making silly decisions. In the cities, people drive quite slow and politely, and then on the highway, they open up the throttle a bit, and it gets pretty quick. So yeah, it's a very pleasant experience. I wouldn't say it's an exciting place to drive, although this now is a bit more exciting. This mountain road. I also... Where is this going? Right round. Let's take it very slow. I expected to see a lot more motorcycles, but I think I can count the number of motorcycles that I've seen here in Japan on the roads on like two hands. On the highway, I didn't see any yesterday, not a single one. Today I saw one on the highway. In the towns, yes, a little bit, but it's, you know, I would say it's sort of like 98 or 99% cars. I honestly expected to see a lot more. Maybe it's just sort of like a seasonal thing, because it is getting a bit cold for motorcycling. Or maybe, you know, some prefectures are more known for it than others. Maybe Fukuoka is not really bike territory. I would think so, because it's the warmest island. This road's a bit more like it. Makes a change from the frickin' highway, which is essentially just a straight line at 100 miles an hour for 2 hours. That was awful yesterday. Bit of rocks in the road. This bike is pretty nice. I'm glad I chose this one. It's very comfortable. In fact, this is probably one of the most comfortable seats I've ever sat on. Even yesterday, I did about 300 and something kilometers on this bike, and my butt was fine. No numbness issues. And that's unusual. You know, a lot of bikes, the seat is kind of not very comfortable after like an hour. This one, no issues. It's a twin. It's an 800cc twin. It's got that sort of Kawasaki signature crank and bevel shaft gear thing, which is like a stick that pokes down the middle of the bike. It looks really cool. Looks really retro. And it's very, very smooth. Very easy to ride. Felt at home straight away. And it'll do 110, 120 on the motorway. The limiting factor is actually your body. It's there's obviously no wind protection, so there's a lot of drag when you're going fast from your body being so upright. When I lived in Kyushu, I lived somewhere like this, out in the middle of nowhere. I was an English teacher back then. I was teaching in sort of public schools. There was two that I went to regularly. One was a middle school and one was a junior high school. Yesterday, the intention was to drive down to my old hometown and relive some memories, but it's so far away. Me and Ed, we only really made it down halfway to this city called Amakusa. And from there, we'd already been driving for 2+ hours, and it would be another 2 hours to get to my old hometown. So we decided to head back, which was absolutely the right choice, because it gets dark here pretty early. And riding in the dark on a motorbike on the highway is not very fun. Today, lesson learned. We're all heading back home at 3 before it gets dark. Well, I guess that was the fun part of the ride is over. And now we're just in this sort of like very flat area. Oh, it's a school or something and they're singing. Japan is just so civilized. There's no other way to describe it. It's the most civilized country that you can possibly go to. It's just so civilized. It's just so quiet everywhere. That's probably the first thing you notice when you step off the plane. Nobody's stressing, nobody's screaming and shouting at each other. You don't hear anyone's phone playing music. It's just so silent and so lovely everywhere you go. And then especially if you're in a small town like this, there's a million of these small towns in Japan, and they're all so quiet. You can walk down the street and you won't hear a thing. Even the cars seem quiet. If you're surrounded by modern Japanese cars like a Prius, they hardly make any noise. So even in the middle of the city, you've got cars sort of driving by. It's still so beautifully quiet. In fact, on my motorbike, I'm probably making the most noise. Okay, this is a 40. That's pretty slow. The guy behind me is really up my butt, so I guess we can, at our discretion, go a little bit faster. One thing I can say about Japan is that it really hasn't changed much since I was last here. So I was last here 20 plus years ago, and it looks exactly the same. Even the cities just look exactly the same because they already reached peak civilization, you know? Japan reached peak civilization sort of like 30 or 40 years ago. Nothing needs to change since then. I don't see Ed behind me, and he's using a different GPS. He's using his in-car GPS. We've noticed that Google and his in-car sat-nav give completely different routes. So I'm not sure which is the optimal one. I hope his map took him on the same route as me, because that was quite a lovely drive. Look at this road. It's such a beautiful road. It's just some random road in rural Japan, and it's so pretty. See if you can spot a motorbike, because there's hardly any. Oh wow, look at this view coming into the town. Every aspect of society here is so civilized, like even down to the amount of space that they give each other when they stop at traffic lights, the amount of space that they give each other in between the cars. It's such a generous amount. It's not bumper to bumper like other cities or other countries. Everyone's just so respectful, and they're like, I don't want to get too close because that would be rude. Leave a couple of meters of space, which is the right thing to do. Here, people just do it automatically. I could honestly go on and on about how Japan is peak society because of XYZ reason. All these little things that are just part of everyday life here that it basically comes down to people being thoughtful and respectful of others. And it just builds up into the lifestyle here. The vibe and the lifestyle here is just so different. I mean, compared to being in Bali or in Canggu, this is like honestly being on another planet. It's so calm. Now, that's not to say that one is better than the other, because there's a lot to love about Bali, you know, and it's sort of the rough and tumble style of life there. But if you want a peace and quiet and zero stress, then Japan is the place. That's probably one of 3 motorcycles that I've seen today. There's just hardly any. It's so strange. In my head, I just imagined Japan having this, you know, fairly strong motorcycle culture, which it does, but there just seems to be not many of them. Maybe it's like a weekend thing where people use their cars in the week and then they'll take a motorcycle out in the weekend. Maybe it's something like that. Huh? What do I do here? Continue straight. I think I'm supposed to find that car park somewhere. I think that was the car park just outside. This is very cute. Right, I think that's the car park that I can use. I see a bike, that's a good sign. I'll park next to this CB1000. Very nice bike.